Out onto looks like what looks like Mesa College Road, and then he turns up on Ashford.
Just nailed that on purpose, and then goes over a car.
It hits the fire hydrant, that one of several that you will see get knocked over as this progresses. Now, it's taken the police helicopter a couple of minutes to get on the scene. This thing started at about 6:40 and it was over by about 7:05 or 7:15. And as he goes around, you could tell he knows what he's doing. And as it turns out, Sean Nelson had been in the military between 1978 and 1980, and in fact had been in tank training and knew very well how to drive these tanks.
Now, we were listening to the radio traffic when all this was going on, and these people were absolutely frantic. You see the black car behind the tank. It's just on your screen to the left. But look at this picture here. Just aims right at that travel trailer, takes it out. Now watch this. Pushes the van, pushes the van, pushes the van. It's going to come into another immovable object, the motorhome. Just destroys the van and rips the motorhome wide open. And we'll make another turn. As I say, Kath, we were listening to this thing on the radio, and you remember the dispatchers were frantic. That black car you will see coming to the scene behind the tank is a police officer. In fact, it was Ross Stone, the person Doug Curley was talking to. They had no idea what they could do at this point.
And at this time, obviously, they had no idea who this was in this vehicle. It would take them, obviously, well until after the shooting had occurred some 20 minutes later to find out who was driving and why, which they still don't know the answer to. And as Dennis mentioned, when you listen to the police radio traffic on this, no one knew what to do about this. And as you will see as we go forward with this tape, he's now, you see how well he knows what he's doing. Now he's avoiding cars. And I think you also have to be impressed with the fact that no one is on the streets.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody went through and said, get off the streets. There's a police car
up there, and this you have to remember, again, as Kathy said, this was about 6:40 in the evening, so that you would expect that there would have been traffic.
And kids playing nothing. I mean, there's nothing.
He is deliberately diving in for some cars and keeping out of the ways of others. There are many more cars on the street than what he aimed at, but at certain times in this chase, he just decides he's going to go for something, and you will see it very clearly. He just something catches his eye, and he dives into it.
And later on, you'll see. At first, they thought he was very careful to avoid people, but you will see that actually he took aim a couple of times.
Yeah, that's a very key point. And at this point in the chase, again, we might tell you that we're listening on the police radios, and they're saying,
how do we stop this?
We don't know whether this guy knows what he's doing if he's just flailing around in there. Of course, today we know that he knew very well how to drive this tank and what he was doing. Did you see somebody get out of the way there?
The car got out of the way. As we showed you earlier in the newscast, apparently Sean Nelson had driven his van straight into the Armory yard over there behind Kearney High School, got out of his van, went over, got into the M60 tank, which he knew how to start, and started it and drove it away.
And apparently there are a couple of things you have to do to start one of those things. There's a fuel cutoff that you have to take off so the fuel will flow, and that's why these tanks were never locked, because you really had to know what you were doing to start one. You couldn't just go in and say hot wire.
Yeah,
like
I mean, for the first 5 minutes, see, he just kind of cruises around. And he's going in circles up on Beagle Street, up Ashford and around Beagle a couple of times, and then eventually winds up on Beagle all the way out to Convoy, which we'll be coming up to in a minute here.
And again, that's Robbery Sergeant Ross Stone in the black car and the dark car behind him in an unmarked vehicle, who just happened to see this thing and got in behind him and is calling in to the dispatcher, Carrie, and saying, what am I supposed to do? And she's going, I don't know what you're supposed to do. How do you stop a tank?
And they did find out fairly quickly that the vehicle was not armed, obviously contacting the Armory people. But on the other hand, they didn't know what Sean Nelson or whoever had on him inside. Now you see him negotiating this turn, and he clearly misses this vehicle.
Right.
Now see how carefully he's driving this thing.
How he negotiated that turn, because one coming up here in just a couple of minutes, he's going to go aiming for a car. Is this the one here?
No.
Okay. A lot of things came out about Sean Nelson today. His brother Scott said he was in a bad state for a long time, meaning drugs and alcohol had gotten the better of him. Here he's just going to go out and take out, the helicopter moves off him, but he's just taking out some trash cans there.
His brother mentioned a problem with methamphetamines, a craving that apparently he just could not fight, and apparently it had destroyed his entire life. A guy who over the last few years lost a wife, basically the tools of his trade and was
Both
about to
parents.
lose his home. There was no power going into his house. The water had been cut off. He was poaching electricity. You see, some guy got out of the way, and it looked like he was going to aim at him.
Well, he did aim at him. Now, what? I think this is the intersection. Yes, okay, so
There
he
he goes.
speeds up and aims at the car. Now, look what happens. The tank goes up into that yard. If he wanted to hit that house, he could have kept going, but it looks to us as though he was aiming at that car because the tank does speed up at that point.
And
Now he backs
and
off.
He backs off, and I think he takes out this hydrant as he leaves.
Is there a hydrant right there?
There
Yep.
you go. And now you hear some of the police traffic kicking in.
That's the second hydrant.
And part of this traffic, the beep that you hear is an emergency signal that tells other units to stay off the air.
Let's see if we can hear it for a minute here. He's on Beagle now.
Okay, I have several units on the air and I need units to hold traffic so I can patch 2 and 5.
Now he's going right through this intersection here
Right.
and did not touch any of those
Didn't
cars.
touch
Those people
anyone.
were in grave danger. Watch what's coming up here with a guy in a green car.
You'll see people have pulled off the road to get out of his way now.
And one guy, this little guy in the green car here, couldn't get out of the way fast enough.
Now, I believe this is on Ashford heading over toward Convoy. It turns into a street, I believe it's called Stemper, that goes out to Convoy. And he's just kind of cruising along at 15 or 20 miles an hour. Again, you see the black car behind him is a police unit. We're just about 200 yards from the intersection with Convoy. What's still into Vista Road at that point. He's going to turn left and go northbound and wind up on Convoy.
Let's see if we can hear some of what they're saying now, because again, he's at this point, he's just cruising, hasn't touched anything in a while.
Okay, units, turn your sirens off, and I've got 2 and 5 patched. I've got units for frequency 2 on this also. All units. Okay, tempo, we need some traffic control. And which Sam, is that you right there?
Basically, what police appear to be trying to do at this point is making sure that traffic is out of the way, but obviously no one knows where this guy is going, except the lucky part is he is in an area of town that is fairly compact in terms of where the streets go and accesses to things.
And again, as we were listening to this broadcast off the police radios, these people were
Mystified.
expressing utter futility as to what they could do.
Someone at one point suggested concertina wire, which sounded just like somebody's wild guess about what to do. Obviously, San
Or getting
Diego
another tank.
City law enforcement is not necessarily immediately equipped to deal with a tank armed or unarmed.
You saw that building on the right, that was the KUSI radio building.
Okay.
And now we're gonna take
Just
a short break
crossing.
and come back. He is crossing the bridge on 805 from
805,
Linda.
the bridge over 805. Now he is getting into some serious industrial area where there's a lot more traffic. You will see cars kind of scrambling to get out of the way. As you will, beyond the police, there are a couple of nitwits following behind them.
These cars, once again, that black car is a police
The
robbery.
one is a police
Yeah,
car.
the one right
There's
behind
two.
it.
I don't know what the white one is.
I believe that also was a police car. I can't imagine that the police cruiser would let that car stay there.
The
if it
police were
wasn't.
desperately trying to block off traffic,
Yeah.
and until this moment, really didn't know where. If they could have, they didn't know how to contain it.
Well, right
for
here,
example.
I mean, they don't know if he's going to turn into those cars right there.
Now
They're
watch.
hoping.
See, he looks like he's chasing that car practically. See that? Even though
Yeah,
it's a
the
police car.
cop's got a lot more power and can get out of the way.
Now
I mean,
he's picked up speed too. He's now looks like he's going 25 or 30 miles an hour.
He's on a wider street. He's out of the residential neighborhood. Yeah, he's motoring now, and he's about to hit some
He's
more
about
stuff.
to hit a fire hydrant. We're about 10 minutes into the mission here with aboard a San Diego police helicopter. We should point out you are listening to radio dispatch traffic from the police as they tried to contain this yesterday, and the whole point of what we were hearing was they were having a very difficult time figuring out what to do next and how they were going to stop him.
Yeah, this is Convoy now. If you're familiar with Kearney Mesa, up by the Home Depot
Target,
Expo
Home Depot
and the
Expo.
Target there.
Othello.
In fact, he's about to go by those. It's a heavily industrial area, a lot of just
Businesses,
corner malls,
businesses, strip
yeah, little
malls.
strip malls.
And again, now you'll notice that traffic is getting much lighter. The police are succeeding in blocking off streets. There
Here
he's
he goes
going
after
onto
the
the
hydrant.
curbs. And he's about to, he
Going
takes out
after
a
another
bench,
hydrant.
doesn't he, too?
That's later.
Oh, that's
there's
another
another hydrant.
And then obviously the shot obscured by the skids on the helicopter for just a second. Veers out of the center divider to take out the light.
Yeah, and he's going to keep going and take out the rest of this light.
They do have the equipment and the ability to take the tank down.
Now that was a critical, you heard the dispatcher ask, do we have any equipment to take the tank down?
Excuse me, they do not have the ability. They do not. That's do not.
So you can hear the problem that police were facing, not knowing who was in there or what was in there with him.
If we can get it stopped. I'm about 3-quarter response. 673 is able to control the tank if we can get him there. How fast is the tank moving?
He's going after another light now, and watch this one. He's going to this is the one he carries with him for quite some time until he turns onto Balboa.
Drags it for a couple of blocks, I think.
And again, we're quite a ways into this now, and they are still absolutely stumped about what they can do to stop this. And this is very, very dangerous because, as you can see, there are probably a lot of people around here if he just decides to turn. He's staying on the streets, but they didn't know what he was going to do. I mean, there's a jack-in-the-box here where he's turning.
The wide
if he plows into that,
still wearing the light post, hits another one.
Right, and that's the jack-in-the-box. There are people inside there. He could have gone right through that thing. So there's the very real concern about what are we going to do about this?
Absolutely, and obviously, as you can tell, there is now no traffic on the streets. Police had blocked this area off. Again, they didn't know where he was going, so it was simply a matter of waiting for him to make a move.
Right. Now we're west on Balboa. We've passed the Jack-in-the-Box. We're coming up on the Family Fitness Center and the Lucky Store on the left and the 805 overpass.
Now he slows down a little bit.
Well, big black smoke. It looks like he's shifting gears or something.
Again, he did have military training for a couple of years. He was in Germany, was
drove tanks, didn't he?
Active duty from 1970 to 1978, rather, to 1980, including a stint at Fort Knox, Kentucky, Fort Dix, New Jersey, Mannheim, Germany. He did receive an honorable discharge after having served his time.
But again, as we've been telling you, his life had started to crumble recently. Friends and neighbors say he had become addicted to methamphetamine. He had an alcohol problem. His house was in foreclosure. His utilities had been shut off. He'd just broken up with his girlfriend. Both his parents had died.
A couple of years ago,
and what may have been the final straw, he'd been pirating electricity from neighbors, but then yesterday, right before he went to get the tank, his water had been turned off. Apparently a lot of things building on Sean Nelson, and this was the way he released. Now we are over. He's going to take the on-ramp to 805
turning onto
here.
the 805 south.
We're on Balboa heading west. There he goes onto the on-ramp to 805 south.
And this becomes incredible. By now you have 15 or 20 cars pursuing Sean Nelson in the tank. And again, as you can hear from the radio traffic, not sure what to do. At this point, what the police are trying to do is simply make sure no one else is injured and that he hopefully hits no one else.
All right, let's see if we can listen in and see what they're saying about him getting on the freeway.
They lose him for just a second here. What he's doing is
he's running over the foil
on the left side of your screen, and he's just taking out some hedges and going across the divider onto the freeway. Takes out a sign, picks up a little bit of speed. Now this is a fairly short distance away from the 163 southbound ramp.
We know this is very difficult to hear over these police scanners.
Right.
They were, again, talking about, now what? Now where's he going? They still have not figured out any way to stop him.
Coming up here is a pedestrian overpass that you will hear them describe what he does to it, or tries to do. You'll see him going, he's going to the right. And for some reason, takes on the overpass abutment.
Well, I don't think
he tried to climb up to it.
He tried to climb that fence and kind of got hung up on the protective fence there. And now he's going to back out of it again, and you can see all the police cars are up on with him, and now they're backing away as well. This is a very eerie scene, you know, on the 805 at just before 7 o'clock in the evening. Nobody's out there but a bunch of cops in an army tank. And there he goes again. Now he's going to continue to the 163 ramp.
Once again, even today, if you heard the interviews with his brother, we don't know why Sean Nelson did this.
No, absolutely. Again, we are on the 805. We are heading south, nearing the entrance to 163 South. Let's listen in for just a moment again while to the police and the dispatcher.
We'll let him know.
Oh, that's pretty unintelligible.
Yeah, it's very hard to hear,
Yeah.
but basically, we were listening to it last night, and we can tell you, at this point, they are still clueless. What are they going to do? Where's this guy going?
Except, I mean, by saying that they didn't know quite what they were going to do to stop it, obviously they were pursuing this vehicle and this person to try to prevent any further damage, and they may have had a plan, but I
Well,
don't
what
know.
they told us today is really, barring having another tank, they were powerless to stop. And our reporter Doug Curley said that last night he did see, in fact, 2 more tanks. So had this thing gone on
They
much
could
longer,
have brought
they
out
might
other
have
tanks.
brought in a couple of more tanks to do combat with this man. I don't know, but they did have other tanks coming because they had figured that was the only way they could stop
they
it. Those
had-
police cars would have been nothing. You saw what it did to cars.
At this point, they are basically corralling him as he makes this move onto southbound 863. And if you know this area, you realize that he's actually gone almost full circle. And if he played his cards right, he could have taken Mesa College off ramp and driven the tank back to the
Back to
armory.
the armory.
But
I don't think that's
you'll
what he was
notice the
thinking.
traffic is totally stopped. Police, again, attempting to corral him until they can come up with a plan and obviously equal size armor to try to slow Sean Nelson down.
A lot of people said as he was going through that neighborhood up on Kearney Mesa that they could see his face, and people were saying, well, gee, I thought they had to cut that hatch open. They were seeing his face through the driver's compartment, which is very low on the tank, near the ground in the front.
Now here's where he starts apparently to make a run for the center divider, and this is where he hits it.
He goes on a little farther here first.
Police car gets in front of it.
Yeah.
Watch.
A tanker bar, get a tanker bar also.
Now, police do know that there is no large armor on board this thing.
And they're still looking for some way to maybe slow him down. Now he's coming back toward the center a little bit. Before he makes his run to the center, he's going to go right, so he gets a little better angle on it because he's going to try to leap
It
that
looks
center
as if
divider.
he does.
Yeah.
Is going to try to leap it. But obviously, none of us has any way of knowing that.
Didn't work, but it looked as though he was going to try to hit it head on, which he didn't do.
Okay. I was a little ahead of myself there in the video.
Yeah, and once again,
There is the Mesa College.
Mesa College
Road
overpass.
drive.
Once again, the people that saw him out the front, not out the top. This will become critical here in the next few moments when they try to get him out of there. There's a little driver's compartment in the front of that tank, very low to near the ground, not up on the conning tower, as it were.
Okay, he's just
On the
about at
turret.
Genesee. Now here's where he turns out again.
Here
Oh,
he
that's
is,
what I
Captain.
thought I was seeing before.
He's
speeds
going
up.
right.
Now watch.
Okay, 10-4.
Looks like he's going to get off for a second.
Here he
Now
goes.
watch.
It's a bar that stops
Bam.
tanks.
Okay. Police are at that hatch in less than 15 seconds. You will see this.
Now, what he has run into is called Armco. It's a concrete barrier which was developed for motor racing.
Now watch the officers. They're climbing up onto the van, or excuse me, onto the tank.
That Armco, that concrete barrier that would not give, and now he has straddled it. He has high-centered the tank.
And you can see with the black smoke that the engine is still on. The diesel engine, I think, is what's in those is
Yeah.
still on. You'll notice the number of officers approaching it.
Now that guy's running back to get the bolt
Bolt
cutter,
cutters.
because one of the people on top of the tank is a reservist, a National Guard reservist who is familiar with that tank and the emergency procedure they use to get people out of the hatch.
And who-
Say this thing is in battle and somebody gets hit in a battle and they are injured in the tank and you need to get them out and they can't open the hatch for you.
Now you'll see he's still maneuvering this thing. He is still trying to start to move this tank.
Right.
So they're staying a little bit away, but he went back to get the bolt cutters. And
They're
this
pounding
this-
on the
trying
hatch
to get him
saying,
to
come
come
on,
out.
get out, and he's still trying to get it off the Armco. So they're going in with bolt cutters. This is the emergency procedure that the guards people are taught to remove injured comrades from the tank.
It is possible. If it sounds like it's too easy to get into, one of the reasons is actually to rescue people. In this case, it was a way for police to get at Sean Nelson, who had hijacked this tank almost 40 minutes before, about half an hour before this.
Now look at all the smoke. I mean,
now the engine is now stopped, and they're trying to.
And I believe
now they're up
the
on there.
engine,
And this is about when the shooting occurs.
Yeah, I believe the engine stopped because if you remember our video from yesterday, when that, you see the track has fallen off, and when the track fell off, that was about the time that they opened the hatch and told him to come out. He wouldn't come out, stuck the gun in, and shot him. Now they are trying to figure out how to get him out.
Let's listen.
North of Genesee.
Okay. Now, by this time, in fact, I believe the shooting has occurred. And police were asked about this today, and as a number of people have said, why did they have to shoot Sean Nelson? And as Captain Tom Hall told reporters today, and as reporters on the scene heard from officers there last night, they got the hatch open. They screamed at Mr. Nelson to get out. He made a move as if he was about to restart the engines, and at that point, the officer, who was the reserve officer, made a decision.
The stretcher has come in, but they will not put him on it right away. They'll move the stretcher back, and he is still in the tank. They made the decision to use deadly force, and this is the police department's explanation, that they considered all the options. One, asking him to come out, that didn't work.
Which he didn't do.
Two, everybody's saying, why didn't they use tear gas? They said, we considered using tear gas, but we were afraid that if we used tear gas on him, it would debilitate him. He would punch it, and the thing would fly off that Armco and injure or kill the officers that were on the tank.
Remember,
or that the officers would become debilitated by the tear gas because they didn't have the proper equipment on, and there was not enough time for them to get it on. This was all happening too fast. The last decision was, he's either going to get off this thing or we're going to have to shoot him, and they shot him. That is the police department explanation. A lot of talk today about why weren't they prepared to just go in and somehow debilitate him without killing him. There is also the theory that this man was doing nothing but wanting to commit suicide by his actions.
By now, Mr. Nelson has been taken out of the tank. He is on the ground, and they will shortly put him on the gurney and take him away. He was pronounced dead a few moments later at the hospital. He was shot when they pulled him out. When they pulled him out, you could see a gunshot wound on his right upper shoulder. They said it was a neck injury, but it looked like a right upper shoulder when you saw the initial tapes. What is still amazing, I think, to a lot of people is that no one other than Mr. Nelson was hurt.
He got close.
He got close. He scared the daylights out of several people, no question.
You saw the pictures of the van, and we heard from the woman and her children last night. Took the front off the van. She was inside with 2 kids, I believe. But that was as close as he came to hurting anybody.
And what is going on all around this scene now is the traffic is backed up 4 miles. 163 between Interstate 8 and basically 805 and Balboa was shut down for several hours. The tank was not moved off of the freeway until about 2 o'clock this morning.
It was taken back to the National Guard Armory, as we have shown you. It's heavily damaged by that run-in with the Armco. Apparently, you know, Sean Nelson had run over just about everything.
Now they're taking the gurney in to move him. He had run over about 15 cars, by our count, if you looked at the video, and that is the end of that tape. What remains after that is more static shots of the officers standing around and people trying to figure out what to do next. Obviously, in the aftermath of this, many questions about security at not only National Guard armories, but many other places where equipment like this in the way they protect armored vehicles of all types from being stolen or moved, and one of them is to put removable batteries in them so that they simply can't be started by, what was that, a little throw switch?
There were two things that he had to do. One of them was getting the fuel going, the other was the ignition, and apparently because he knew what to do, he could do both those things. Obviously, if it didn't have a battery, that'd be a lot tougher.
And they're also supposed to now start disabling the steering and also locking the transmissions, but that is coming today. It was not in effect yesterday.
For the latest on this investigation, tune into the KUSI Morning News tomorrow starting at 6 a.m. Laura and Paul and the gang will have a lot more.
And tomorrow they also will be talking to the National Guard to try to get some more answers about how this could have happened in the first place.
We are not done yet. Terry Burhans will be here with the weekend weather forecast, so stay with us.